Good morning and peace be upon you this beautiful Sunday, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Qasim Rashid, and this is the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. If you're listening on Substack, make sure you hit that subscribe button so we can continue to bring about this advocacy. We've got a great show, an important show lined up today. Former Congresswoman Marie Newman is here with her new book, A Life Made from Scratch. We're going to talk about, does America need a third party? And we're going to talk about Trump going full speed ahead with fascism. And I don't use that word lightly. If you've been following the media stories, Mahmoud Khalil is a graduate of Columbia University. He's one of the lead protesters during last year's protests where Jewish and Palestinian students and Christians and non-believers all were united in calling on Columbia University to stop or to divest from the Netanyahu regime as they were committing war crimes and genocide on Palestinians. And because he was one of the main organizers, he's been heavily targeted. And last Saturday night, 8 days ago, ICE agents raided his home illegally. No judicial warrant, no due process, denied him access to counsel, and disappeared him. Yeah, it's like something out of a draconian, Russian regime. Mahmoud's a green card holder. His wife is a U.S. citizen. And what the Trump administration did was they sent ICE to illegally detain him without a warrant or charge because he peacefully protested the U.S. government's policies. They even tried to arrest his wife, who's a U.S. citizen and 8 months pregnant. And then they put him in an undisclosed location, which we finally found out was in Louisiana, more than 1,000 miles away. Didn't tell his family where he was, didn't even give him access to legal counsel. Last Wednesday, there was a judicial hearing where the judge, unfortunately, said that he'll stay in custody, but asked the government to provide a more thorough argument for why they think he's justified in being in custody. And if you read my Substack article, I go into all the details about this, so I won't relitigate that here. But I will just say this really important point. If Trump is allowed to be successful here, if he's allowed to abduct a documented green card holder and disappear him and deport him without trial, without charge, without it going to a jury, then we're all in trouble. And I don't say this lightly. We are all in trouble because the whole argument this whole time has been, we believe in free speech and we just want documented legal immigration. Okay, well, Mahmoud Khalil exercises free speech. There's not a single example of him calling for violence or calling for any kind of hatred towards any people. In fact, he specifically says, I firmly believe that the success of the Jewish people and the Palestinian people is intertwined and we should work together. That doesn't sound like someone who wants terrorism. That sounds like somebody who wants to work together. So he exercises free speech. And then he came to the United States the right way on a green card, documented, as tens of millions of people have. So he did everything he was supposed to do. And still, because his speech wasn't favorable to the Trump regime, he's being abducted and disappeared. And so that's why I say, again, whatever side of the political spectrum you are on, it is critical that we stand united against this injustice. Because if it doesn't stop here, it's going to accelerate quickly. On my Substack article, I have a phone script and an email script that you can use to contact your member of Congress, along with a link to your member of Congress. I also link the petition, which already has millions of signatures, to release him. But again, think about the journey here. What began as demonization of asylum seekers, advanced to a ban on asylum altogether, advanced to mass roundups of immigrants, documented and undocumented, advanced to codifying those mass roundups and mass deportations without due process via the Lake and Riley Act, then advanced to locking up immigrants in a 30,000 person concentration camp in Cuba, and is now advancing to secret police abducting legal U.S. residents in the middle of the night to oppress speech they don't like, all without a warrant, without charge, without indication of where he's being held and under what conditions. This is how autocrats and dictators seize illegal power. This is how fascism takes hold slowly at first and then all at once. This is not supposed to happen in a democratic republic like the United States, where the Constitution and separation of powers and due process of law are supposed to matter. Yet here we are. So, my friends, this is what the Martin Niemöller poem was really about, where he says, first they came and I didn't speak up. This is your time to speak up. This is our call today. And if we fail at this, there's no going back. So we cannot fail. We have to work together across political lines and demand justice. When we come back from break, I'm going to invite my good friend, former Congressman Marie Newman, to talk about this exact conversation of where we are as a democracy, where we are as a party, where we are as a country, and where we need to go going forward. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. We have one of my favorite people in the whole wide world again with us today. Former Congresswoman Marie Newman is here. We're going to be talking about her book. We're going to be talking about do we need a third party? It's a question that her and I have both been getting almost incessantly, and we wanted to air some of those questions. Later, I'm going to play part of a clip that we had a lengthy discussion on both of our Substacks. So go and hit subscribe there as well. But first, let me just welcome our guest of the hour, Marie. Thank you again for being with us today.
Hello, so happy to be here.
You're like my comfort call when I'm like enraged about democracy and I need someone to like talk me off the ledge. Like you kind of give that comforting, calming vibe that it's going to be okay. And that's one thing I appreciate about you, that no matter how bad things get, a call to you helps kind of take off the edge, and you speak with such logic and rationale. Let's start with that, because that's one of the biggest things I get from folks today is I'm feeling hopeless. I'm feeling extremely uncomfortable. I'm feeling extremely scared. What do I do? How do I get past this? What is your go-to? How do you reassure folks that we can get through this?
Well, first and foremost, this is a doable situation. This is not a huge mountain with another mountain range behind it. Whenever I speak to activists, I've been doing a lot of these engagements over the last since Trump was inaugurated,
Yeah.
funnily enough. So after 10 or 15 of those chats, it's clear what people are most worried about, and that they do need some hope. And I don't like to give false hope, because that's silly. That's just hollow, and then it goes away soon. But this is real hope, because real things are happening, right? The boycotts are working.
Yes.
Target lost 16 billion the first month, is on track to lose more this month. Tesla is in the doo-doo bucket for sure.
Yep.
Like I couldn't be more thrilled about that. To the point of now, Trump is doing White House lawn Tesla sales.
Used car salesman commercials on the White House lawn.
Oh my God, I have never cried laughing. Like even before it got made fun of, I was like crying, laughing, watching it.
Yeah.
You're both so very sad.
Yeah.
So they're feeling it, and I think Doge is feeling it. I think that the Republican senators, what I'm hearing from staffers on the Hill is that, oh my gosh, the phone lines are still melting down, and the Republicans are hiding from everywhere. So it's not just that they're not doing town halls. We've all seen those headlines. They are staying out of hallways. They are going. So on the campus, on the White House, or sorry, on the Capitol campus, you can go from the Capitol to all of the buildings in an underground tunnel. But usually people go outside because it's nice to get a break and walk outside. So usually 80% of, so now they all go through the tunnels, so they have less friction from both protesters as well as reporters. And let's give a quick shout out. I think reporters and journalists that are not bought and sold by Jeff Bezos and the like are actually asking real questions when they can. So in other words, they aren't invited to the Oval Office anymore, as we all know, but they're asking real questions. So boycott's working. The AGs, let's talk about those sheroes in here. Oh man, go baby. Like they are having
the state attorneys general, like every state has an attorney general.
Right.
And I've not seen much media about this. We should write about this more. But what have state AGs been doing that's been so effective?
So every time Doge or Trump does one of these crazy EOs or slash and dash things,
Yeah.
the folks in this coalition of 16 attorneys general across the nation are ready with a lawsuit to either rescind it, reverse it, or stop
Yep.
it in some form or fashion. And about two-thirds of the time, they're being successful. There's a lot of good news there because unlike the Democratic Party, they were ready for this Trump nonsense. They read the
Yeah.
book. They read the 900-page Project 2025.
Yep.
We do have lots of things going well. And I will tell you, the protests are growing. And that
Yeah.
does, you and I say this all the time, right? Courage is contagious, folks. Here's how, is that the more people that are explosive in their energy and their protest energy, the more public sentiment will be clear, and then our Democratic leaders will act more forcefully and act like a real opposition party.
That's right. I mean, nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. It's the oldest saying in the book. And so if you're wondering, why don't I see a crowd around me? Build a crowd, be the crowd, organize a protest.
Yeah.
And there are so many organizations out there willing to work with you. Indivisible is one of them. That's excellent.
Move
Find
on.
what's that?
Project 5050.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you just Google it, folks, a seven will come up right away.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, find a local labor union and say, hey, I'm not part of the union, but can I protest with you guys? And they'll welcome you in because the whole goal is to build solidarity and community. I'm gonna play a clip from our conversation specifically because you mentioned something really important that I want to double down on, that the state AGs were ready. They read this Project 2025 Fascist Manifesto, and they said, well, if this guy wins, these things are gonna be followed through. They're telling us, they're giving us a fascist user manual. Let's
Yeah.
actually be aware. And the state AGs, to their immense credit, they got ready. They got these lawsuits ready. And the second these EOs were filed, they're starting to file them on the state level aggressively. And one of the frustrations that I think a lot of folks have is, where is that fight among the National Democratic Party? Why weren't there 800,000 lawsuits ready to go to stop this nonsense and clog up this fascist attempt by Trump? You know this better than I do because you were in Congress when they were voting to repeal the ACA. Republicans have voted more than 100 times to try to repeal the ACA over the last, 15 years that it's been law. Have never proposed an actual solution to it. No, that's not what they do. But they sure as hell love trying to repeal the ACA. And the frustration is, if they can vote 100 plus times, in addition to how many lawsuits that got to the Supreme Court, by the way, to repeal the ACA, why can't we, file similar lawsuits to block these atrocious bills? So we're gonna quickly go play about a 10-minute clip that dives into that, and then when we come back, we'll talk about some of the updates with the budget bill and what the impact of that is going to be. So let's dive in. Got a good group coming in. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. It's a privilege again to speak with my good friend Marie, former Congresswoman from Illinois' 3rd Congressional District. Ran a brilliant campaign, took out a corporate Democrat, which we need fewer corporate Democrats in Congress, and has been an unapologetic voice for the entire country, for working class folks across the political spectrum. I know Marie's often described as a voice for progressive values, but I think that limits her. I think if you look at her campaign, if you look at her work, she's been an unapologetic voice for people, regardless of political background, especially in the working class. And I think that's what makes her so special. We co-wrote a piece today, and we want to talk about that and take your questions as well. I'll bet you folks put your questions into the articles that we respectively published. The title is America, We Need to Talk, New Movement, Third Party, or Both, Exploring a Sensitive Question That Too Many Seem Too Afraid to Ask. And Marie, I want to give credit where credit is due. It was your idea that we should write this. And I said, yeah, definitely. What ignited the idea to write this in the first place?
Oftentimes we think that our government is like almost like an old organism that doesn't change much, right? But government changes all the time. Society changes, traditions change, composition of societies change. So of course our government would change, right? And what I was seeing everywhere is the dissatisfaction with our Democratic Party leaders. And part of that is what we've talked about, right? Is
Yeah.
that we have activists have always led throughout all of time. and
Right.
throughout every country. So this is no different. So now our activist leaders have to decide, do we want to help our Democratic leaders reform the party, create a movement within the party, or should there be a third party? And it's really a chewy question, right? Because third parties are not easy, or they're not for the faint of heart. Our movements much less work, maybe, maybe not. And how do we reform if we go down? So those are all the things that were swirling around my head, mostly because my amazing subscribers were asking the same question. So I really started to think about, is it time, that we have that hard discussion?
I think it's absolutely time. And look, this is not just based off of like, licking our finger and putting it up and seeing which way the winds are blowing. We're seeing the hard data. Quinnipiac University put out a poll, and it's been substantiated by several other polls as well, that shows that Democrats have a historic low, a 21% approval rating, a historic low. Republicans are at a record high of 40%, and Donald Trump is even higher at 45%. And so for those saying that, no, 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 we got to stay in the Democratic Party, my question to those folks is, okay, it's an established party. I get it. How do you explain that in the face of an actual fascist who is endorsing Nazi salutes, uh, you know, sexual assault against women, convicted, 27, 37 times, I've lost count, of felony bank fraud, and, the list goes on and on and on.
Mhm.
Facing that, you're at 21%. It would be one thing if Republicans had like this genius moral icon who is just God's gift to politics. But we're talking about like the worst of the worst, and you have a 21% approval rating. If this was any other industry, any other world, Marie,
Yeah.
and your top performer had a 21% success rate when his opposition is double his success rate, you would think about, hey, maybe I need to get a new top performer.
Yeah.
So in the comments, those who believe that's the thing, I want to hear it. But the second part of it, and this is where I think the point you brought up is really important. I think this is the part that you wrote, that members of Congress are terrified to take risks. Even as the opposition party, too many Democrats rely on corporate donors like PAC and APACs, donors and PACs like APAC, who dictate their positions instead of fighting for both solutions. The result, a party too scared to lead, too compromised to be effective, and too weak to counteract fascism. That kind of describes what we're seeing right now with the Democratic Party.
It is. We all know that when you operate from fear, whether you're operating from fear within your family, your community, your business, your political organization, whatever it is, operating from fear is never a good thing.
Yes.
Um, and so when you operate from fear and paralysis sets in no matter what, right? Like you just become stunned and a deer in headlights. And they've had a lot of time to work through that fear. I mean, it's been 4 months now. And so my issue is that I would have been preparing way back in the hinterlands a year ago. Look, I've got this 900-page tome called Project 2025 to get ready for, God forbid, our great candidate doesn't win.
Yeah.
And she was a great candidate. So at the end of the day, um, the party just wasn't prepared for this. And then secondly, they're operating from fear. What we have to do as activists is lead and help them understand you have public sentiment behind you, and that's
Yeah.
when politicians are most effective. You now know you have the sentiment. We're going to keep on doing all the things, the calling, the protesting, letting folks know how we feel, and all of those good things. Right? We're going to keep doing that. So now you have to get rid of your fear and walk through that firewall and
That's right.
decide how you're going to lead, right? And so that's what we're asking right now. And if you can't do that, ask for our help. That's fine. But the first thing they have to do is to say, hey, we do need to go ask people what they want. The number one thing that I saw on the doors when I was knocking for Kamala was Trump voters would say, well, nobody ever asked me. And, the Democratic Party is always telling me how I feel. And that's very
Right.
frustrating. I will
Right.
tell you, when I was campaigning, it was the first thing I would do is say, hey, what's bothering you? What is your issue?
Yeah.
What is your problem? And
Yep.
I don't think we've done that. We haven't knocked on doors in all 50 states and done soft soundings and focus groups. And that's my assignment. And I do think Ken Martin, the new head of the GNC, is actually doing that. So that's the hopeful spot here.
The some of the questions, very well said, Marie, very well said, and I'm hopeful to see more. I will say it seems like he's hiring a lot of the same consultants as in the past, which is a
Yeah.
problem if you ask me. Um, somebody brought up the point that we risk splitting the party and we risk handing over every election to Republicans going forward.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that objection, that concern?
I think that's valid. I think that what we have to do is demand different behaviors and different operating strategies. And the way we do that is keep doing all of the strong activism we're doing, but be clear with our leaders that, like, look, hey, we are here for you, but we demand that you act as an opposition party, not a resistance party. Like, right, this is work outside the box, break the rules, and stop with, oh my gosh, decorum, decorum, decorum. Because guess what? Decorum doesn't exist anymore.
No.
And you're going to lose your country if you keep on worrying about Emily Post's etiquette book and do you have your finger up when you're drinking a teacup? Like,
Yep.
stop it.
I mean, and I think that's part of my frustration with the party leadership right now. We're seeing some grotesque examples of fascism and just autocratic behavior.
Mhm.
Mahmoud Khalil is in the news right now, green card holder, no criminal record, no charges, no warrant, nothing.
Pregnant wife. Yeah.
Pregnant wife, 8 months pregnant, U.S. citizen. He's abducted and disappeared in the dark of night and moved all the way to Louisiana, not told, his family's not told where he is.
Yeah.
And if you read the responses from Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, they both start by scolding him for being an anti Semite and say, and even though he's an anti Semite, we shouldn't be doing this because it's bad. And I'm just like, this is the Mike Brown, he's no angel all over again. This is the, well, she was assaulted, but what was she wearing all over again? It's like,
Yeah.
you don't need to be a perfect human being to have constitutional protections, first of all.
Right.
And second of all, the precedent that's being set here is far, I mean, and like, I'm not even going to get into that he's not an anti-Semite, because I mean, there were Jewish people who've already spoken on his behalf far more
Right.
eloquently
Right.
than me.
Yeah.
And so I'm not even going to get into that argument. That's,
Yeah.
to me, such a trivial
And it's very
distraction.
old and tired. It's silly.
It is.
He's
It
not.
is. And
He wanted
I will.
peace.
I will just say it's disgusting to me that they're ignoring the countless Jewish voices that have come up and said, no, he's not anti-Semitic. He's explicitly clear that the survival of Jewish people and Palestinians must happen together. That's his
Right.
whole point. And if
Right.
you're not going to listen to Jewish people when they're telling you that, then I'm not going to sit here and try to convince
Yeah.
you otherwise. They've said it eloquently, and I believe them, and let's move on. But the broader point of the lack of fight that we're seeing right now is, and the judge is going to rule today after the hearing, but if it's established that Donald Trump can just abduct and disappear people because he doesn't like their free speech,
Right.
that changes the whole narrative of due process in this country. Nobody is safe at that point. And
Yeah.
I need democratic leadership to be more powerful and more assertive than, well, he's an anti-Semite, but I guess we shouldn't do it to anti-Semites either. Like, what are you trying to accomplish at this point? And what needs to happen for you to understand that if Trump gets away with this, democracy, our republic is done. We are Putin's
Right.
Russia at that point.
Right. And let me just make a point because it's absolutely apropos at this moment is we're seeing inactivity by our Democratic leaders when we do see them speak out. Now, not all of them. I want to be clear. There is a handful, Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Ro Khanna, Bernie
Delia
Sanders,
Ramirez. Yeah.
Delia Ramirez, Chris Murphy in the Senate. They are speaking out. They're being forceful. They're acting like an opposition party. The reason Jeffries and Schumer are not acting like the opposition party and taking leadership is because I'm just going to be clear with everyone, and I'm sorry if I offend everybody, but they are controlled by corporate PACs and APAC. They just are.
Yeah.
And so they are afraid to make a move because if they piss off those two entities and where their money comes from, oh my gosh, what will happen? When in reality, they should stop worrying about that money all the time and start worrying about what's right for the country
Right.
and
That's
have
right.
that fight another day about the money.
Lockheed Martin funds Jeffries pretty heavily. Every corporate PAC you can imagine. I was chuckling to myself when they put out an ad during the 2024 presidential campaign about how billionaires support Trump, and then somebody countered by pointing out that more billionaires are donating to Harris. And it's like, you guys, if you don't see the hypocrisy in that
Yeah.
picture, then what do we have to tell you? Now, was Harris a better candidate than Trump? Undoubtedly. There's like no comparison, right? It's like comparing a candle to the sun. Like you
Yeah.
can't compare the two. She was a far better candidate. But, and this is the point that Democrats on the establishment side don't seem to understand, you can't just say, I'm not Trump and expect to get the vote. That's just
Right.
not how it works. It's
Right.
never worked. And somebody
Right.
made this comment here as well that I'm tired of Democrats beating me over the head, that if you don't vote for me, the other guy's far worse. Give me a vision to vote for. Give me something. And by the way, I'm saying this to Marie Newman, who led by example, who said you don't have to just vote for the guy who's not a Republican. You can vote for somebody, and that's how you took out a corporate Democrat. I'd love for you to kind of share that vision and that story
Yeah.
for those who don't know the journey you went on, and everything you're saying now is not theory. It's not hyperbole. You
No.
practiced this.
Lived
You
there.
you
Yeah.
executed this. You accomplished this.
Yeah. In the Wayback Machine in 2018, I ran against an opponent that was anti-immigrant, anti-women's health care, anti the ACA, on and on, long list, right? That's why I ran against him. Um, and because it was a corporate Democrat, I started bringing it up then that we don't need to be beholden to corporations. It's silly. You can run a good ground game. You can raise small dollar. You can do all that stuff. We did. We got real close in 2018. We lost by 2 points, came back in 2020 and won.
Yep.
But then the fight was not over about corporate Democrats, right? Is that
Yep.
corporate Democrats still are alive and well, and probably more well than ever in Congress. And so 89% of Congress, when you combine the entire body, 89% of Congress takes corporate PAC money.
Yeah.
And it's hundreds of thousands of dollars and sometimes millions of dollars per member of the
Yep.
House and Senate, right?
Yep.
So this is how severe this is. And they all are controlled by it. They'll say, oh, well, I don't vote based on who I take money from. Well, that's a bunch of horse hockey. And we all
Yeah.
know, right? So
Yep.
let's just not even accept that as an answer. But back to the point of I ran those races. I wasn't afraid to lose my job. These
Yeah.
folks are so afraid to lose that money and lose their job. I told my staff every week, it's like, we should do the right, honest, transparent, authentic thing no matter what.
That's
And if
right.
we lose our jobs, we lose our jobs, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'd rather look in the mirror knowing I gave all I had for what I believe
Yeah.
in than wake up knowing I'm there as a tool or fraud for somebody else. And if you want to listen to the whole clip, just go to Marie Newman's Substack or my Substack, and we have it on there. It's about a 40-minute conversation. We took questions from the audience, some fantastic questions, including won't a third party split the Democratic vote? And Marie had a brilliant answer to that and how we overcome that. Marie, I want to talk about what's kind of developed since then. And one of the big things is this continuing resolution. And I think part of where Democrats fail is they don't explain what these bills, like nobody knows what a continuing resolution
Right.
means. It's not like common language, right?
Right.
Explain what a continuing resolution is and where we are in the process right now.
It's actually relatively simple. A continuing resolution is usually brought forth by one of the parties when you can't come to a conclusion on the funding bill. So every year when we're building the budget, we vote on it. But more often than not, in the last decade, there has to be a bill before that because they can't get to agreement. So there has to be a temporary bill that will allow government to keep moving and keep be in place and not get shut down while they're trying to decide what is in the budget. So it's just a quick maneuver to allow government to continue to work while they're figuring out what the budget is.
And why do we need to vote on the budget? I'm going to ask basic civic questions because I don't want anyone to
Sure,
feel like
sure.
they're out of the loop. Why do we need to vote on the budget every single year?
Because it's just like a community organization, a board, or a company, large or small, right? Is that you can't spend without having enough money in the bank. And then likewise, you have to predict what your revenues will be. So we have to understand what tax revenue will be so that we can build a budget around it. And then you have to stick to that budget. Then
Yep.
what happens is you get instructions in the budget for all of the federal agencies that receive those monies to do it in a very specific way. They can't just do it willy-nilly. Oh, I've got 700 million, I'm going to spend it however I want. They have to, it comes with instructions.
And the problem right now is that Republicans want to pass a budget bill that provides massive tax cuts for billionaires.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, $4.5 trillion. And because of these massive tax cuts, they can't show where revenue is going to come in. So then they have to do what as a result? How are they making up that gap?
They're not. That's the problem, is they're kind of doing fake math. And, you know, even a sixth grade math student can figure this out. I mean,
Yeah.
they're saying they want to cut $4 trillion out of the federal budget. And to pay, and the reason they want to take that out, and let's all be clear, I'm going to say this very clearly and slowly, that $4 trillion they are trying to take out of the budget is going to be applied to billionaire and oligarch tax cuts.
Yeah.
But yet they don't have a way to pay for it because it is almost nearly impossible to get 4 trillion out of the budget. We all want waste out of the budget, right? I don't know a taxpayer on the planet. That said, do it in a methodical way. I've done this big analysis for companies and communities before, is that look at the budget. Don't go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I don't like that line item in the budget. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to slash it, right? You have to look at things, research them, analyze them, and then present a revised budget, not willy-nilly. I'm just going to do whatever I want.
And right now, because they're doing it kind of this Doge willy-nilly nonsensical stuff, they're the only way they can make this math work, and the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, just came out with this assessment as well, is by either cutting Medicaid or Medicare. And
Yeah.
let's be honest, this will kill people. This is not hyperbolic
Oh,
language.
it
This
is, yeah,
absolutely kill
you're
people.
absolutely right. This is, so when the government shuts down, folks, immediately what happens is that food stamps, health insurance, federal worker pay, all of that goes away immediately the second on the
Yeah.
stroke of midnight when the government shuts down. So it is very serious and it plays with people's lives.
And I remember the last government shutdown, also under Trump. Um, I was working at a soup kitchen. The food lines were all federal workers who didn't have the ability to buy food, because the majority of Americans are one paycheck away from
Right.
being out on the streets. Medicaid, 80 million Americans rely on Medicaid. 41% of all children born in this country, 41% are born to parents who are on Medicaid as well. So, the hypocrisy of Republicans saying, well, we need more babies, we need larger families. But then the people having babies are told, oh, you're out of luck, go figure it out on your own. It's absolutely absurd. And this is why I say that this is not a Republican voter versus Democratic voter issue. This is not a centrist versus progressive, or far left versus far right. This is class warfare. And so if you're listening and you're like, well, I voted for Trump, or I can't stand Harris, or I can't stand Democrats, fine. You're missing the point that when they cut these benefits, it's going to affect you just the same. Your elderly parent who needs Medicare or Medicaid to get by, they're going to be affected. Your child, or your adult child who may be struggling and needs Medicare or Medicaid, you who are on Social Security, because now they're talking about cutting Social Security, they're coming after you all the same, and they're telling us they're going to do this. And this
For
kind of
me,
go ahead.
yeah, I'm so sorry. For me, the two things I'm most worried about is in one bucket, it's Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, because
Yeah.
they definitely are going to cut those, and don't believe any of their crap and saying that they're not cutting it. They absolutely are. They are actively working on that right now. So just to be clear, we have to protect Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare. That is our red line. That's what we should all be focused. Every single 350 million Americans should be looking at that, right?
Yep.
And paying attention. The other thing I'm very worried about, because it affects our electoral system, is the fact that he has attempted to move the post office into the Department of Commerce.
Yeah.
So A, it's illegal, and we all know that, and there's AGs working on that. But B, what he wants to do is this maneuver has been tried before, is put it into a department, and then pretty soon you can spin it off and it's its own company, it's a moneymaker. Worse than that, and that's disgusting. Worse than that is that then he can play around with mail-in ballots and make sure that he wins, he or someone like him wins again. So those two
Yeah.
big buckets are what we should all be eye on the prize.
I think someone who's a friend of mine in Texas was looking at the cost to mail something right now, which is like 70 cents versus under the privatized system, it would be like $13.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
and you know, folks need to understand it's called the United Postal Service for a
yeah.
reason. It's not a
Yeah.
business. And if the argument
It's,
is, well,
by the way, it hit the post office is the only federal agency or federal entity that has a 92% approval rating.
yeah,
92. And
it's
why would
amazing.
you mess around with that right now? And by the way, it usually comes up net neutral, meaning that their budget always lands in, it's like a nonprofit, is that they don't make money, but they don't go into a deficit.
Well, and one of the reasons why they don't make money, by the way, it's not because they're not productive, it's because under the
Right.
Bush administration, they passed absurd legislation that they need to pre-fund their retirement 20 years in advance. Nobody does
It's
that.
Yeah.
But they've
That was
required
just,
that
that was very
additional.
punitive to unions. It was just a, like a big F you.
Yeah, yeah, it has nothing to do with the actual. I mean, so without that, if they had to, let's say they had to find only 5 years or 10 years in advance, they would absolutely be making a profit. And you're right. The
Yeah.
only reason you would break this down is if you want to privatize it, sell it for parts, raise money with private equity, make the wealthy even wealthier. And beyond mail, again, to double down this point you made, Marie, people's
Yeah.
medication rely on USPS. So if you have heart medication and you live in rural parts of the country where it's hard to get to, you're not getting your medication on time. And again,
Yeah.
that's the point of these policies. It's not about improving the general welfare, promoting the general welfare as our preamble to the Constitution calls us to do. It's about
Yeah.
privatizing these businesses and making billionaires even wealthier.
Yeah.
So right now, it sounds like, and this is again where I want Democrats to fight. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. They have full control of the government. If the
Yeah.
shutdown happens, the talk is already, well, it's the Democrats' fault, which is infuriating because Democrats need to be explicitly clear about this, that no, you're in charge. You're supposed to be the adult in the room. We are
Yeah.
adults, but you're the adults in charge, and you're allowing it to shut down. It sounds like there's going to be a 30-day continuing resolution. And at that point, how much confidence do you have that Chuck Schumer is going to stand firm and let the Republicans own the shutdown if it happens?
Well, first of all, let's, on the bright side, there are several members of the House and Senate that are saying, no, Republicans, you own this. You are shutting down the
Yes.
government and being clear. I would love for some responsible journalists to be a little louder about that, but
Yeah.
that being said, so there are some doing that. They all need to do it like a highly tuned orchestra. It needs to be a song that is in harmony
Yes.
at all times, right?
Yep.
So I wish that was happening. It is happening a bit. On the other side of the coin, I do think that the Republicans are trying to hang this on us for sure.
Yeah.
And so we have to just be louder and more frequent about this. And if we did what I have been suggesting forever, a weekly counterbalance report that was formal in nature, where the House and Senate leaders came out and said, this is what they did, this is what we would do. In very plain English, we would all be in a better position because Americans would really understand what's going on. Schumer, to your original question, I don't have confidence that he's going to do all the right things for whatever reason. And you and I talked about this on the Substack Live, is that
Yeah.
Schumer and House leadership and Senate leadership is owned by AIPAC and by corporate PACs, and they do what they're told. And for whatever reason, they are afraid to really bust a move here. So again, folks, get money out of politics and we won't have all these problems.
I'm just reading a post, and I'm not a huge fan of his because his voting record in Congress, one of your former colleagues, was terrible. But Adam Kinzinger has made a point that he goes, so let me get this straight. Gavin Newsom is desperate to platform MAGA. Chuck Schumer is de facto supporting the continuing resolution. What's the point of an opposition party
Yeah.
again? And again, I'm not a huge fan of Kinzinger because his voting record was absolutely atrocious in Congress, but he's got a
Yeah.
point.
Oh, it absolutely does. And you know, it's funny. Adam has gotten a lot of democracy poured into him since he's been out of the House. I will tell you, like, now he would be just like a conservative Democrat, really. Like, I mean, honestly, like, I just, in fairness to him, I think he understands what exactly happened in the run up to Trump. So God bless
Yeah.
him for having that turnaround, and we
Yeah.
appreciate his comments. And he is right in this instance, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I mean, credit where due. I always want to give people space to
Yeah,
grow and to
yeah.
become better versions of themselves. It's always important. But and so what we should be doing now is, and you've made this really beautiful point before, is we should be lighting up the phone lines of members of Congress. A lot of folks tell me, well, it doesn't seem to do anything. It doesn't seem to matter. What are your thoughts about lighting up these phone lines? What impact does it make?
I do this hierarchy model, and you won't be able to see the dance that goes with it. But when you're a member of Congress, the things that affect you the most is when people show up at your offices. Just show up. That'll get your attention, and be kind, respectful, but very, very clear, and get your message across, and don't back down. So just show up. That's one thing. Protest their office. That's another thing. It can be their offices in district, or it can be in DC, and be clear with them what you want and need on both the Democratic and the Republican side. So in other words, if your message is protect Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, be clear with them and don't back down and say, hey, look, if you're a Democrat, you have to vote no. If you are a Republican, you have to vote no, and tell your boss to get some sense, right?
Yeah.
So showing up, very important. If you can set up a meeting with them and be very clear, and bring folks that are affected by this. Bring folks to their offices that are affected by Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare. The next tier, if we go down the totem pole, is calling frequently, and being very clear, and demanding that the message gets to said person. Remember, because people ask me all the time, is that when you call and they ask you for your zip code, they say, well, we only take our own state or our own district's calls. If you're calling a member of leadership, and there's 5 people in leadership in the House and 5 in the Senate, if you're calling them, no, they are leading the House and the Senate. Everybody is their constituent. So you can tell
Yes.
them right back to that. And I demand you give them the message. So calls are very important. Emails, what I would do is when I was in the House, is that I would look at if there was a specific issue, and they'd say, hey, Congresswoman, there's 30 calls for and there's 70 against. Well, I very much knew how to vote then.
Yeah.
So calls are important, because then they can decide, okay, what is the opinion out there?
And
And
this
then,
document those calls too.
yeah, and then social media is okay. It's not great. I don't think it really does very much for anybody. It
Yeah.
doesn't move politicians at all.
Yeah.
But the showing up, and that can be at a protest, at their office, when they're on the Hill, all of those things. When you show, it's real hard not to look somebody in the eye. I got to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I wanted to have folks hear that from you as somebody who experienced those calls in Congress, and
Yeah.
be able to relate the impact that it has. We're down to our last couple of minutes. Um, the last thing I want to talk about was you've got a book coming out, A Life Made from Scratch, and we're having a book launch party here in the Chicagoland area on the 18th. Tell us about the book, and where folks can get it, what it's about, and where they can come see you at the book launch party.
Well, thank you so much. So, as I was leaving Congress, some publishers came to me and said, hey, we'd love for you to write a book about your journey. And I kind of paused and said, well, I don't think it's that interesting. And they convinced me otherwise, obviously. So I wrote the book. The reason I wrote the book is that I want people to understand their everyday activism is so important. Everybody can build something powerful from scratch, whether it's in your community, in your state, or federally, which is why I ultimately ran for Congress. I wanted to have huge impact on the economic equity and healthcare equity in this nation. So everybody can build something from scratch, which is why I called it built a life built from scratch, a
Yeah.
life made from scratch. Sorry, and my motto is everybody can build something from scratch, right? So this book tells you how to create coalitions and social movements, right? And gives you a little bit of advice along the way. And it also gives you a very clear view of how things really work in Congress. If you want to understand why we have some of the troubles we do, look at those stories. Now, there's always hope. So I do share some things that have changed as a result of the things that happened when I was in Congress. So there's good news in here, but it also gives you a real bird's eye view as I came up to Congress and then in Congress and on my way out. The easiest thing to do is to go to my website, marienewmanstudio.com. That's my name, marienewmanstudio.com. Or you can just go to Barnes and Noble or bookshop.org and buy A Life Made from Scratch.
And I read it, it's wonderful. And I want to emphasize the aspect of the raw, unfiltered, kind of behind the scenes of what's happening in the black box of Congress. And then we are having a book launch, this week on the 18th,
Tuesday. If you're in the Chicago area and you want to come to Lombard, the Yorktown Mall, the beautiful store, Barbara's Bookstore is hosting a lovely event for me Tuesday, March 18th at 7 p.m. Stop by and say hello. It's going to be some spicy conversation around politics and then just yucking it up a little bit, have a glass of wine.
I'm going to be there. I'll not for the wine because I don't drink. So I don't get angry
He's
emails.
one of the good guys, right?
I might be a few minutes late because it's right around when fast breaks, but I will be there to support you. And Marie, thanks again for just being a light in these dark times and helping us navigate through it as well. I encourage everyone to follow you on Substack and to pick up your book as well. Hope to have you back on here soon.
All right, great. Have a great day.
You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. That was Marie Newman. Her new book, A Life Made from Scratch, is out in pre-order already. Go pick it up right now. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. That was Congresswoman Marie Newman. Hope to see you this week at Barbara's Bookstore in Yorktown Mall in Lombard at 7 p.m. on the 18th. I think that's Tuesday. I want to close out by asking y'all to, again, elevate this critical story. As you know, I spoke out extensively against the genocide in Gaza last year. And now, despite a January 19th ceasefire, Netanyahu has continued to bomb northern Gaza and has now cut off all aid to Gaza. And notwithstanding that the ceasefire, put that on hold for a second, even without a ceasefire, international human rights law obliges any occupying military to ensure that humanitarian aid is flowing unrestricted into the area they're militarily occupying. So forget about this grotesque act of Netanyahu of breaking the ceasefire. He's ignoring this obligation altogether of humanitarian aid. And even worse, the Trump administration's just sent another $12 billion for Netanyahu to use however he wants. And I also just read that while I negotiated a peace deal with Lebanon, there was a side deal with the US government where Netanyahu can still bomb Lebanon. So, we're not in a great spot right now. I've partnered with MATW to raise funds for direct aid into Gaza, especially this Ramadan. I invite you all to join by contributing whatever is in your budget, whether it's $1 or $1 million. Doesn't matter to me. Just contribute whatever you can. It is a tax-deductible charitable donation. The link is in my bio, and the link is on my Substack as well. This is for food supplies, water supplies, medical kits, hygiene and shelter kits. We'll be able to deliver the food, distribute the emergency medical supplies, and just provide basic human dignity to folks. This generosity that you're going to be providing is going to help lots of trucks, and you can go online and see the videos of the trucks going into Gaza as well. But we need to act because unfortunately the world is a cruel place. But as cruel as the world is, I firmly believe in the power of human compassion, of empathy, of sacrifice, and of commitment to justice above all else. So whatever you can contribute is going to go a long way. And even if you cannot contribute, share this. Share this with your network, share this with your family, share this on your social media, because there may be somebody in your circle who does have a few extra bucks they can throw towards this and try to alleviate some of this suffering. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate your continued work to stand united for justice, because that's how we get meaningful progress for those in need. Oof. All right, I told you it was going to be a long show today. It's going to be a tough show, but these are the things that we need to talk about that aren't getting the airtime they need. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow me on social media across all platforms at Qasim Rashid. I will continue to advance a show that builds on compassion and justice and accountability for those in power. Got a great show lined up for next week as well. Be sure to tune in, same time, same place, at 10 a.m. Eastern on Sunday on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126. And then if you're listening on Substack, make sure you hit that subscribe button because your support goes a long way. My friends, be fierce, lead with compassion and justice, and continue speaking truth to power. Until next week, peace.